Welcome back to Uncaged, the official podcast of BA Tiger Sports. We are now joined by head football coach of the Broken Arrow Tigers, Josh Blankenship. Coach, how you doing this morning?
Doing great. You?
Doing good. We're glad to have you here. First and most importantly, let's talk about your transition to Broken Arrow and the impact it's had on you and your family.
Impact is definitely the word. It was hard at first. Lindsay and the kids stayed back. Let them kind of tie up some loose ends with school and Lindsay's business. Had to sell the house. Had to figure out how we were going to get foster kids across state lines without getting arrested for kidnapping. So eventually worked all that stuff out. They all got out here in, I think it was the maybe mid-April. They were able to finish up at the schools they were going to be going to here in the district, and so they got a couple weeks under their belt there. And then since then, the impact's been unbelievable. For Lindsay and her business, the church we were able to get back into that we used to be a part of when we were here, our kids thriving in the schools that they're in, the different sports that they're a part of. I mean, you just name it. And then a little peek into my anxiety. I was in that little bitty town that we were in. I was kind of questioning myself as a dad. Is this, tiny little rural remote area, where I want my kids to grow up, their entire, school time, and didn't have to answer that question, once we got here, and love every bit of where we're at.
That's awesome, man. And I know my oldest and one of his 7 are in class together at one of our elementary schools and have become, good buddies. And you'll see I forget what we're calling the vehicle that hauls all the Blankenship kids around.
It's got a few names.
Let's hear a couple.
There's the Blankenship.
Okay. The Blankenship. Okay.
The blank tank.
The blank tank. I like that one.
Lindsay's.
So we see the blank tank all over town hauling the kids to practices and schools and church and daycare and dinner and restaurants and movies. And so anyways, it's been awesome to see their transition, obviously from my standpoint, because I know the impact that it has had on he and his family.
Talk a little bit about the hashtag. You've probably been asked this question before, I would imagine, but hashtag to the tree. It's become somewhat of a battle cry in the locker room amongst the coaches, the players. Talk a little bit about what it means to the program moving forward.
Yeah, where it kind of came from, just my memory of being little and going over to Kirkland, as a ball boy for Dad, and seeing that tree or dealing with that tree as the PATs were kicked and having to find the football. That was just kind of the image that kept popping up in my head as a guy that wasn't a part of the program before. And I asked about it in my interview, and in that process, we kind of talked about it. It was one of those things I couldn't shake free from. I knew I wanted to somehow tie that into what we were doing. And then it kind of became a thing that just the fact that it was behind the goalpost, just that image to me was pretty unique. And then being able to kind of reach back and touch to the tradition of this place, simultaneously, challenging our guys and our program to go further than what we believe everybody else is doing. And I think that message, carries into everything that you're doing. It's not good enough just to cross the goal line. What are we going to do to separate ourselves and to, go further?
And Coach, there's kind of there's a quote that resonated with the team about what sets men apart, and it's kind of tied to, kind of that image of, most teams are going to sprint through the goal line. We're going to sprint through the end of the goal line, through the end zone. And what was that quote? Remind me of what that was.
Well, I'm kind of a movie geek, and not that I'm trying to train up our guys to be bootleggers, but the movie Lawless,
yep.
And Forrest Bondurant talking to his baby brother, and he said, "It's not the violence that sets men apart. It's the distance they're prepared to go." And, man, that was something there's not going to be one quote that's going to, flip a switch for your guys, but, the constant process throughout the season, and then to see them willing to go further than a team that they were playing, whether it be, critical games there at the end of the regular season or that first-round playoff game, that no matter what adversity we faced in the game, our guys were willing to go the distance.
And we talked about this earlier in the podcast, Greg, about with Coach Wallace and Coach Coffey. But um, our students here in Broken Arrow, they really relate to toughness. There's a culture of toughness. It's a blue collar tough community, and I feel like when we're able to leverage that part of their DNA, that they really do resonate with that. They respond to it. They believe it. Is that something that just in your short time with the program that you've seen firsthand?
I saw it immediately. And then I felt like my challenge and our challenge as a coaching staff was how do we harness it? Um, I didn't want it to be a frantic toughness. The kind of the immediate thing I saw was, we would get under the bench or under the squat rack and we would just be animals. I mean, we would just get after it. But how disciplined was it? How focused was it? Was it on the cadence from the coach that was barking out the commands, or was it just on their own? But it definitely was inherent, and I saw it immediately. And then that was my number one challenge right away. I felt was, how do you harness it and focus it?
You talked about the origin of To the Tree coming from your days as a ball boy with your dad. What's it mean to you to be able to look on the sidelines and some of those special moments and see a couple of your kids out there chasing balls around?
Yeah, it's awesome. We didn't ever push sports on our kids, and just kind of wanted to let it be organic, and whatever they were interested in, we wanted to encourage them in. But at the same time, I knew being a coach's kid, it was going to be pretty hard not to be interested. And, for them to have that very special coach's kid experience where they're around the facilities all the time, and then to be able to get to witness those magical moments, that can only happen through sports, and to feel like they're a part of it, and to have a job where they feel like they're contributing, have a role. You can't simulate that, and you definitely can't do it where I was at, not to this level.
So, Coach, I know our goal as coaches, it's always to win the last one. That's a universal goal of every program. But you can always take from every year, especially year one. You understand it's a foundation. So, what do you take from year one and look back on as the foundation on which we're going to build ultimately the program and what it stands on?
Yeah, winning your last game is the goal, like you said, and but there's very few teams that actually get to do that. But you want to be one of those teams. That's the reason why we're doing what we're doing. I'm pretty simple-minded, so I'm a picture guy. We're building a house right now, and what I keep thinking of when I think of this season is a foundation and the framing being up. But that's it right now. I feel like we've got the house framed.
Yeah.
We've got those pillars we always talk about are critical to our program, that we try to teach and instill, but really you only learn them through those experiences that those guys had through the season. But I feel like especially led by that senior group, we've framed up something pretty special, and it's a bittersweet thing. You're when you reflect, you're really proud of what this group accomplished, but still being 3 points away from going to the last game and having those extra 2 weeks of practices and all those things that could set your program apart. I hope, which I believe is probably my biggest next challenge, is busting down that wall of contentment. I hope it made us more hungry. It gave us a little bit more clarity in what we're capable of, and hopefully have a sense of urgency right now, not mid-season next year after we take a couple lumps. But right now we have a sense of urgency to go knock that next wall down.
Yeah. You talked about seniors, and obviously every group of seniors is special for coaches, but I think your first year on the job, especially as you're trying to build that culture, that's probably a group that you have. Talk about some of those guys that you're really going to miss, but then also talk about some of those guys that you expect to step into those leadership roles next year.
This senior group will always have a special place in my heart. You go into a new place and you could immediately get resistance, and you could go through a tough year of just waiting on those guys to graduate so that you can really focus on the young guys. And I didn't want to have to do that, and I did not have to do that. Our guys bought in, and I even hate that word buy in because you can buy out. But they committed, and they didn't dip a toe in. They jumped all the way in. And the maturity I saw, the growth I saw, I could rip off name after name after name, and then I feel like I'd still be leaving some of those guys out. Those seniors were special, and they have set a standard here with this group. And it's not – this is always important for me to say – it's never a knock on whatever's been done before. It's just the way we're going to do it now. And those guys decided this is our new culture. This is how we're going to do it. And the exciting thing now is to watch. I got a email from a freshman late last night explaining why he missed. And I'm like, okay, here we go again. We got to teach these young guys how this works. What's cool now is my guys that have been in the program are going to be the ones teaching these guys how we do things, how we don't do things. And so one of my hopes is that because of what these seniors have done, we become a player-led more so than a coach-fed program. So pretty excited about what those seniors have done.
Coach, you're jumping, head first into off season now, and obviously every day is critically important for next season. Talk about just off season in general. There are obviously different phases of off season, and everyone is, probably aware of the strength and conditioning that goes into it. But talk about just what the weight room does and just kind of that suffering together as a team. Like, what does it do to a team going into spring football and team camps and 7-on-7s and eventually fall camp?
There's the physical aspect of it, obviously, like you mentioned, and I kind of leave that up to Coach Ellett, who's the expert on all that stuff. And for me, being the head coach, I've got more of the bigger picture, the cultural aspect of it. And to me, it's always a simulation of hopefully the 13 games plus scrimmages that you're going to play, next fall. And you don't want to wait. We always talk about the only guarantee is adversity. Well, you don't want to wait till you hit adversity to decide how you're going to handle that. You want to have already have gone through simulated adversity. If we can do that and they learn to lean on each other through that, that's the key. Obviously you got to fight the getting into the mentality of a grind, and it's got to be something that they're thinking about on their way over, just like on game day. There's never a game day on a Friday or the occasional Thursday game where those kids aren't thinking about it all day at school. I want that to be happening for their off-season workouts. The thing I'm challenging them on right now is, like we said, a sense of urgency. And the way I tried to explain it to them was, if we had surmounted those 3 points against Union in the semis, then we would have, and I counted out what because I had way more plans for what we were going to do if we won than if we had lost. And so I already had our schedule mapped out, and that would have been 10 practices, including walkthroughs and whatnot, that we missed out on. That's a spring ball.
Sure.
And so I wanted our guys to understand that the two teams that played in the state championship, not to mention Bixby, who played in the championship that's going to be in our district next year. So 3 teams have 10 extra practices on us than we had. And if that doesn't give you a sense of urgency about who you're going to be facing to win a district championship and hopefully a gold ball, you're missing it.
Yeah.
So sense of urgency, and I know I'm kind of long-winded here, but it's fresh right now. But we got the brain trust upstairs. Everybody in the athletic department's coached football at some point, and so I'd like to go bounce ideas off those guys. But Coach Spav up there, he's got a deal called being a 6-second player. That's kind of our theme right now. Of not being a guy that's just going to go hard, at the snap of the ball for a couple seconds. We spent a lot of last offseason talking about the whistle to snap, what you do in that thought process, after the play ends, leading up to the next play. I think this offseason we're going to spend a lot of time focusing on being a 6-second player, and then ultimately we want to find who those 10-second players are, those maniac second rundown on kickoff coverage. I compare it to running the quarter in track. You just got to be a bad dude. So if we can find those kind of warriors and, create a standard of work ethic that guys want to achieve that status of being a 6-second player and maybe even later a 10-second player, that's kind of what we're thinking about right now.
Love it.
You guys had several really memorable wins this year, not only just because of beating quality opponents, but just the epic, way you guys won both against Santa Fe and the Owasso playoff game. Talk a little bit about if you had to pick one moment of the season that maybe just a small moment from those games, or maybe it's another game, what would it be?
Man, there's a bunch of them. The one I can't get away from is the win against Santa Fe. It was the first big win, kind of post finding our identity a little bit on both sides of the ball. The first half of the season was a lot of moving pieces around, tinkering with what worked, what didn't work. And we kind of felt like we were coming into what we believed we were. Then to not only implement that against a really good team, really talented team, but then for it to be hard. I mean, and earned. And we talked a lot about that week, about earning it and not just expecting it to be given to you, but to go take it. Um, it really takes those moments sometimes to cement some things that you're trying to teach. And I think I'll always remember that particular game as kind of one of those moments that cemented a lot of the things we were trying to establish culturally.
Yeah, I know for me, when I knew that you guys were going to win that game, I went over there and positioned myself on the sideline. You're always looking to get those great shots, and I knew where you were going to be. But then when you kind of did that fist pump
Yeah, I started
twist,
moving a little bit. Yeah.
it was a pretty sweet shot. Right place, right time there. Before we get to the kind of get to know you rapid fire questions, Dunn, you got any final questions for Coach?
No, it's just awesome to see a locker room of players that love each other, a brotherhood. Um, the messages that are consistently given to them, I think they sunk in, and it was exciting to see. Um, you saw genuine joy and happiness when they suffered together and when they celebrated together. And that's always a huge goal for any program and any coach is developing young people. We've got this very, very small window of influence on them, and once it's gone, you, your time is up. And having a heavy hand in how they're developing as young people. And so to be able to look back and to see how this team in 2021 came together, and it's going to be an impact that I think is immeasurable, that we'll look back on. And I think that there's a lot of gratitude in that locker room among each other. This was a group that got very close. And so again, it's exciting to see the offseason start. You always hate it to start, but you're excited too, because that's where the magic happens. That's where the chemistry evolves, and the identity of it as a team is developed. And last year, kind of having a shorter off season, not much time to prep and plan for it, and trying to figure out, what street is a word versus a number, as we all know in Broken Arrow, and just knowing where all the schools are and wanting to go sit down with principals and coaches and meet teachers. And so just the familiarity, I know that's going to be a very positive off season for Coach Blank and his staff. And I would just say too, last question for Coach Blankenship, because, BA, the strength of Broken Arrow is our numbers, and the weakness of Broken Arrow is our numbers. And as the head coach, you've got this vision, and you've got ideas, and you've got excitement and enthusiasm and all the energy in the world. But 8th through 12th grade, you've got 340 players, and then you have 4, 5, 6 teams per grade level at the Broken Arrow Youth Football Association. And so I would just ask Coach Blankenship about all those bridges that he's been building. His intentionality with Chad Lott and Mo Wallace and the 8th grade staff, the 9th grade staff, and really what relationships and what coaching staff means to you, and how you've gone about trying to surround yourself with a group of men who believe in the vision and will roll their sleeves up to see it happen.
I'm glad you asked me, because I was almost going to interrupt you while you were talking, because that was exactly what I wanted to acknowledge was, we're kind of reflective on, how special this year was, but it doesn't happen at places that aren't like Broken Arrow. You talk about ideas and all the things you want to do. Well, here they're cultivated. Like, you present it to your bosses, and they're like, well, how can we do that? As opposed to saying, well, we can't do that because, well, I need to hire this, this, and this. Well, go hire them. Being able to hire the staff that came here was probably the most critical thing that they allowed me to do. And those guys get the credit for the culture moving forward, as it has and as it will move, is a credit to that staff. Those guys are unbelievable, and they're completely in and share the values we share. And then all the way down to youth, 8. I had a kind of a debriefing into the year meeting, or into the season meeting with my bosses, including Coach Dunn, and asking needs and wants. And the first thing I blurted out, without really even thinking about what I should say, was, some things I want to do at the 8th grade level, or what are the ideas that we can do to improve that 8th grade program. And I believe that's critical. When they transition from the youth sports to school ball, and making sure that's as positive as an experience as it can be, and start teaching them how we do things in the Broken Arrow football culture. Youth wise, I've really been able to develop a relationship with Chad Lott, and then Maurice Wallace has been plugged in with them as well, and he's one of our 8th grade coaches. It helps that one of my boys is playing youth football, so I'm over there all the time watching his games and practices, and just watching how those things operate. The future is very, very bright, and then how do we connect it all has been, my goal since day one, and we've got some fun ideas of some things we're going to try to do to, keep those young kids excited about the future in BA football.
Awesome. Let's do some rapid fire questions. And Dunn, why don't you jump in here too, since we had 2 coaches for the last one, and people can get to know you a little bit better as well. First off, start with you, Coach Blankenship. Best sports movie of all time, any sport.
Ooh, pretty much anything Kevin Costner's in.
He's been in a lot.
Draft Day is one of my favorites. A little bit more recent.
Dunn, how about you?
I think about my dad and growing up, and I think it's going to be corny, but I think about Vision Quest and hey, Brian's song. I don't know if you guys were familiar, but yeah, just some of those old school flicks that we would watch together.
I'm a Hoosiers guy. Hoosiers gets my vote there.
Hoosiers and The Natural. Yeah.
Favorite on that same topic. Favorite childhood sports memory. We're all 3, coaches' sons. What is something, watching your dad's team play, something that really sticks out to you, Coach?
I've got some when I was super little that are little, I was probably running bleachers or causing problems. But the one where I really felt engaged was, I guess it would have been 94 when Justin Fuente was the quarterback and Eric Bernard was the running back. And I could rip off a bunch of names on that team. But kind of a magical year there. Dad's first state championship run with Union. Went and played the Bombers from Midwest City, and I remember being there at OSU Stadium, ball boying that thing, and just I felt like I was helping us win, and then I was the reason we lost because that ball wouldn't dry. That probably stands out the most.
Like that.
That's that game is one of many, many childhood memories of mine. My next door neighbor was an offensive lineman in Midwest City, and so we were not only there, but we were down on the field, and I just remember then that was, you're a young guy and you're watching ball, and it was kind of the advent of Oklahoma high school football and kind of what we're experiencing now. But, Greg, too many memories, like you said, when you're raised by a coach, there were so many. I think I got my first SWAT from my dad. I wore cowboy boots on his wrestling mat. And so I would say it's not a great memory that's burned into my brain, but
it sticks out.
It's kind of funny, because growing into a coach and doing it myself, you are so particular about the right way to do things, and a rule's a rule, and coach's kid rarely gets away with breaking a rule, and so don't wear cowboy boots on Coach Dunn's wrestling.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Some of the memories that I have the most are some of the bad ones, whether it's after a loss or coming home and my dad's slept in a chair in the same in his suit and tie from the last night. Coach, everybody or not everybody, but I do, and some of those people that get to the games early and you kind of get your run in there. What's in the headphones? What's on your playlist when you're getting that pregame run in? Or are you a podcast guy?
It's usually a podcast. I'm not going to reveal my political affiliations, but it's usually something like that. Just something real world, not think about football.
Take your mind off
about
things.
20 minutes, yeah.
Dunn, what about you? What's on the playlist these days for you?
A lot of people don't know this. I'm a pretty eclectic guy, and there's a lot of different music and music styles that I love. 1 minute, I could be listening to My Morning Jacket or Wilco or
nice
Ryan Adams or something like that. And the next I'm rapping every word to Biggie or Tupac or some of those guys that we grew up on. So. Pretty eclectic musically, but probably what I'm listening to probably the most right now. Heard the Turnpike Troubadours are getting back together.
Yeah, I saw that the other day.
And Evan Felker and that bunch, they out of Tahlequah or Okemah, they make some good music, and they're Oklahoma boys. And so That's probably what I'm listening to a lot now. My wife, she's a podcaster. She likes um, cold cases and true crime,
Yeah.
and so that's usually playing um, absurdly loud.
While
And
she tries to wrangle 3 kids.
yeah, she's got to turn it up over the
You-
3 kids yelling and whatever it is I'm watching. And I ended up just turning mine off and listening to her podcast from the other room. But a lot of praise and worship music. We'll throw it on Pandora. Disney Channel. That was what we listened to this morning, dropping Ava off. We had the Disney Channel Pandora.
You might try something that I've started here this year. I take my 2 boys to school every morning, and I didn't want to necessarily hear Imagine Dragons for the 5,000th time, but so I've started doing a song of the day for them, and it's usually from the 80s or 90s, and we play it. I give them a little background info, and then if it's appropriate, we'll watch the music video at home later that night. So.
Well, that's
a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
I put headphones on the drive to school.
Most of the time I'm trying to remember if we changed a diaper,
Well, I don't have to worry about diaper changing
or if
anymore,
all the kids actually ate that night, or if homework was completed. But no, Coach Wallace mentioned Michael Jackson earlier. I've got an external hard drive, from the days of Napster and LimeWire, with way
You're still not subscribing to anything?
No, way too many songs, thousands and thousands and thousands. And so, yeah, I actually yesterday we were listening to Michael Jackson, "Blame It on the Boogie." That's an underrated song, but that was one that we
kind of
grew
a
on for the
non-album
kids.
cut.
It was really good.
Yeah. All right, last question, then we'll let you get out of here, Coach. Any hobbies or things that people should know about you that they don't know outside of football?
Man, was it me and you, Dunn, talking about? I don't have any hobbies. Like, I really don't. I hope to develop some once my kids are a little bit older.
Yeah.
But if I have any time away from football, I feel like if I'm not home, I'm gonna get in trouble. So it's man, I love to fish if I have time. Man, I remember a few years ago we'd have a noon hoops game going on that I probably went 2 years without missing one. I love playing basketball, but no, I mean I feel like without being too cheesy, I feel like my profession is a hobby that most people wish they could do, and so I think I've got to embrace that and appreciate that for what it is too.
Good. Coach, last one.
I do love hunting and fishing. I don't have a lot of hobbies outside of that. I tried golf, wasn't very good at it, and the competitor in me, I ended up not having joy.
Yeah,
doing it.
that's exactly how it was. I just could not.
It's like what was supposed to be a release and be, something fun and a hobby,
Yeah.
it ended up not being one. And so I really, really enjoy being outdoors. I love hunting and fishing and great memories, growing up and memories that I want to provide, to my kids as they grow up. I play the guitar. A lot of people don't know Michelle.
There you go.
I
That's
go back
cool.
to my wife. I was playing, the other night, and it just, I get my own little world, and she's trying to put the 3 kids down, and I'm in the back room playing a guitar, and I can hear my youngest singing while she's trying to put her to bed. And so, she told me to stop crooning, I think is what she said. But probably that, pretty simple guy.
I don't think I've ever told you this before, but now that you mentioned playing guitar, the thought pops in my head. But you actually have a little bit of a Garth Brooks vibe to you. When Garth Brooks takes off that cowboy hat, and you kind of both your voice and your look a little bit Garth
I
Brooks.
think he's saying you're gray.
No, I meant it as a total. In fact,
Definitely.
there's a pretty recent Garth Brooks documentary on Netflix right now. I think it was actually originally on somewhere else, but Netflix has it. And I'm just sitting there watching it, and there was a scene where he didn't have his cowboy hat and he's talking, and I wasn't paying that close attention. I was like, "Is that Steve Dunn talking?" It was Garth Brooks.
This is bizarre since you went there.
I'm not the first one to tell you that.
Not
Or I
even
am.
that. Not even that. But like in the last, month, best friend in the world I grew up with, just the other day sends me a text message of a GIF of Garth Brooks and said, "How did I never make this connection before?"
Yeah,
And I'm
exactly.
like, I don't see it. But then, what's crazy is Smokey's Barbecue out
Yeah.
off of 71st.
Yeah, that place is awesome.
Incredible barbecue. This has been a couple of weeks. I call up there, place an order, and when I get there, I said, "Hey, I've got to pick up, for Dunn," and she said, "Oh no, it's for Garth." And I said, ma'am, it's under Dunn. And she goes, no, you sounded just like Garth Brooks. And she goes, and guess what? We all talk about it. Like when you order, because it's right on the way.
I feel so vindicated now.
Yeah, vindicated, validated. So yeah, this is kind of a new thing. I wish that I had his paycheck.
Don't we all?
His talent, and everything. But no, thanks for pointing that out.
That's funny. All right. Well, on that note, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Uncaged, the official podcast of BA Tiger Sports. I'd like to thank Steve Dunn for co-hosting this with me, as well as Coach Josh Blankenship, and of course our basketball coaches, Shane Coffey and Bo Wallace. We will be back soon. Be sure and subscribe to the ArrowVision Podcast Network on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and we will be back with more episodes. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.